Today we are going to discuss about the Sulci, Gyri and the functional areas of the brain. As we all know, cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It consists of right and left cerebral hemispheres connected by the corpus callosum. The surface of the cerebrum is folded into gyri and sulci. The gyri are the raised margins of the gray matter or raised folds. Then the sulci is the groove separating the gyri. This one. Then we are going to discuss about the surfaces of the cerebral hemispheres. It includes the superolateral surface, medial surface and the inferior surface. This is the superolateral surface of the cerebral hemisphere. The lobes seen here are the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe and the temporal lobe. We are going to discuss about the important sulci seen here. The most important one is the central sulci. It separates the frontal and the parietal lobes. Then precentral sulcus. Precentral sulcus forms the anterior boundary of the precentral gyrus. And here comes the postcentral sulcus, which forms the posterior boundary of the postcentral gyrus. Then is the superior and also this one, that is the lateral sulcus, or it's posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. It separates the temporal lobe from the, this is the temporal lobe from frontal and the parietal lobes. And also the superior and the frontal sulci. This is the superior and the inferior frontal sulci that forms the frontal gyrus. Then comes the intraparietal gyrus, that is this one. It forms the superior parietal gyrus and inferior parietal gyrus. Then important functional areas and the gyri. The precentral gyrus, that is this one. So here the frontal lobe is here. This is the area number 4. This is the precentral gyrus. Precentral gyrus, which is the primary motor cortex. Its function is to initiate the voluntary movements. And this is the postcentral gyrus, that is the area 3, 1 and 2. This forms the primary somatosensory cortex. Here the function is the touch, pain, temperature, pressure and proprioception. Then comes the superior and middle frontal gyri. That is the area number 6. This is the superior and middle frontal gyri. This is the premotor cortex. Its function is to planning and coordination of the voluntary movements. This is the primary motor area and this is the premotor area. Then area number 8, which is the middle frontal gyrus. This forms the frontal eye field. Its function is to voluntary conjugate eye movements. Then is the inferior frontal gyrus, that is area number 44 and 45, which forms the Broca's speech area. It functions maintaining the motor speech. This is very important. Area number 44 and 45 is Broca's speech area. Then comes the superior parietal lobule. It forms the area number 5 and 7. This is the sensory association area. The function is interpretation of sensations and stereognosis. So the central sulcus forms a boundary between the motor and the sensory area. And then inferior parietal lobule, that's the area number 39. Here comes the area number 39 in the inferior parietal lobule. Area number 39 helps in reading, writing and language. Then area number 40, that is language integration. Then area number 41 and 42, which lies in the superior temporal gyrus, that is this one. They form the primary auditory cortex. They form the primary auditory cortex. Primary auditory cortex, they helps in hearing. Then area number 22. This is also very important. Area number 22 is the Wernicke's area. Function is comprehension of speech. Then the area number 18 and 19. Here comes the which lobe? Occipital lobe. The occipital lobe helps in the visual association cortex. The function is interpretation of visual information. So the main areas that you have to remember is the Broca's area, that is the area number 44 and 45. Lesion in here can cause motor aphasia. Then is the Wernicke's area. The Wernicke's area is the area number 22. Area number 22, which helps in the comprehension of speech. Then is the precentral gyrus lesion, that is the primary motor area, which lesion can cause contralateral paralysis. Then the postcentral gyrus lesion, which is the primary somatosensory area. Here the lesion can cause contralateral sensory loss. This is the medial surface. The lobes here are the same as that of superolateral surface, that is the frontal, parietal, temporal and occipital. So the important sulci seen here are the callosal sulcus, that is this one. And the callosal sulcus separates the corpus callosum and the cingulate gyrus. Then the cingulate sulcus, which is above the cingulate gyrus. Then parieto-occipital sulcus separates the parietal lobe and the occipital lobe. Then comes the calcarine sulcus. The calcarine sulcus, site of primary visual cortex. Then the important gyri that is seen. This is the paracentral lobule. The paracentral lobules forms the area number 4, 3, 1, 2. The paracentral lobule is the brain structure which is seen on the inner surface of each cerebral hemisphere that controls the lower limb movement, body sensation, bladder and bowel functions. The important function is the lower limb movement and bowel and bladder function. So paracentral lobule is very important. Then comes the cingulate gyrus, that it's also a part of the limbic system. They control emotion, behavior and memory. Then comes the precuneus. This is the precuneus and this is the cuneus. The precuneus is the function is visuo-spatial orientation and sensory integration. Then comes the cuneus. This is the area number 17. This is the primary visual cortex. The function is for vision. Then comes the lingual gyrus. Here comes the lingual gyrus, which forms the area number 18 and 19. That is a visual association cortex. That is the functions for interpretation of vision. Then comes the uncus. This is the uncus here. The uncus is the area number 28 and 34. That's a primary olfactory cortex. Function is smell. So you have to learn at least the sulci, gyri and the functional areas that I am mentioned here. So the importance is that calcarine sulcus lesion here, it can cause primary visual defect. Then paracentral lobule lesion, that is this one, which can cause weakness of the opposite lower limb. So this is about medial surface. Then comes the inferior surface. This is the inferior surface. The inferior surface have two surfaces. the one is two surface. The one is the orbital surface and this is the tentorial surface. The orbital surface, the important sulci are olfactory sulcus. This is the olfactory sulcus. And then is the H-shaped orbital sulcus. This is the H-shaped orbital sulcus. Here it is divided into, by the H shape, it is divided into medial, lateral, anterior and the posterior. Then the important gyri seen here are the gyrus rectus. So gyrus rectus, then medial orbital gyrus, lateral orbital gyrus, anterior orbital gyrus and the posterior orbital gyrus and the gyrus rectus. The gyrus rectus is a straight gyri. So that's why named as gyrus rectus. Then the functional area, here is the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex, which helps in judgment, personality, decision making and the social behavior. Then comes the tentorial surface. Tentorial surface forms the tentorial sulcus forms the rhinal sulcus, which forms a boundary of the uncus, which we have mentioned in the medial surface, that is the area number 28 and 34, which is the primary olfactory cortex. Then comes the occipitotemporal gyrus. This is the occipitotemporal sulcus. So occipitotemporal gyri, which is the occipitotemporal gyri, which is a visual association cortex, which helps in face and object recognition. Then the inferior temporal gyri can be seen here, that is visual association cortex. Then the parahippocampal gyri. This is the parahippocampal gyri, which forms the limbic cortex. It helps in memory. Then comes the insula. The insula is a part which is located deep within the lateral sulcus, covered by the frontal, parietal and temporal opercula. The functions are mainly taste, visceral sensations, pain perception and autonomic regulation. So that's all. Try to study all the figures given in the text. It will be more than enough. So thank you.